Welcome back to the Real Estate Insider Podcast, the show where we highlight the agents who are doing this business the right way, and we let them tell their stories in their own words. I'm your host, Jared Sawyer. I've been doing lending for 22 years, and I started this podcast for one simple reason. Our industry gets judged really by the worst examples that are out there: fraud headlines, shady stories, social media hot takes, and it all paints real estate and mortgage into kind of the same category, and it's just not the reality. Most agents work very hard, very diligently, and practice with a ton of integrity, as highlighted by today's guest, Mabel. She's a third-generation realtor, bilingual, valley-wide, and she entered the business at literally the most chaotic time imaginable, right as the world shut down during COVID in 2020. And she didn't just survive, she built momentum in a pretty amazing way. So this is going to be a fun one. Mabel, thank you so much for making time and coming on and dealing with some of the technical difficulties and jumping in there. How's your day been so far?
So far, it's been great. Thank you, Jared, for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. This is going to be fun.
I'm looking forward to it. No, you're fun to talk to, so it's good. All right, so before we get into your story, I want to clear up what this is. It's no catch, no cost, no expectations. I know that you kind of had a little bit of your guard up coming into it, but this really is just meant to be highlighting you. So hopefully that takes the pressure off a little bit here and you can just feel natural in talking today. So tell me about your story a little bit. I know I kind of highlighted that at the start, but where you come from, how you got started, and why the heck would you pick real estate to do as a full-time career?
So, like you mentioned, I am a third-generation realtor. My mom started real estate here in Arizona in 1985. So technically, she was pregnant with me. I might be aging myself a little bit. When she was showing houses here in Arizona, she moved from LA County, and and the primary reason why we moved from LA to Arizona was because of the earthquakes.
Mm,
My mom left kind of like the end of the big earthquake from 79 that was, just detrimental over there in California. So she set up shop here, which is kind of interesting because her goal when she moved over here was to open a restaurant. And typical, she moved here in the winter. Business was great in the winter, but once the summer hit, it was just a ghost town. We were hitting 120 degrees in the 80s. And back then there wasn't the nice AC systems we had. Some of them were swamp coolers. So
right.
a lot of the business people weren't coming they weren't leaving their house. So there wasn't like DoorDash like there is now or
Right.
delivery services. Like in 85, you had to go and get your food, right?
Right.
So she lost that business sadly, and the only other business she knew was real estate, and she dove right back into it again. Hence, 30 some years later, here I go as a third generation agent. It's kind of funny because primarily I was gonna go into healthcare. I'm a Spanish bilingual medical interpreter. I worked in healthcare for at least almost 10 years. And it was kind of funny because I'm a mom of three. So working my hours with a mom of three, it was getting really challenging. My work was getting challenging, so it went down to kind of like a part-time status.
Mhm.
This is about 2019. I went into real estate school. I got my license. My whole plan was to kind of like stick to my healthcare job during the day and do my real estate on the weekends. And so fast forward, February of 2020, I remember it. It's actually now the end of this month is going to mark my anniversary where that healthcare facility, they let me go. And so I remember I called my mom, like, what am I going to do now? And she's like, well, you're going to go out and sell. I go, okay. Ironically, I was very lucky. I got my first listing in March of 2020.
Yeah.
I was so excited. I was so nervous that my hands were shaking as I was filling out the contract because it was my first transaction. And lo and behold, the next day we go into the quarantine. So everything just shut down. So I was like, what am I going to do to sell this house? And like you mentioned, on the listing side, it was nice. You were getting multiple showings. That's when a lot of the virtual showings came in. You were doing TikToks, you were doing YouTube, you were doing Facebook live showings, whatever you could do to market your listing. I think that broke the ice for me as far as approachability. This still makes me nervous. I know it probably seems
You're
natural to
doing
you, but
great. No, you're doing fine.
like a lot of people think it's natural, but it's scary to speak in front of a camera and, let the whole world get to know you. And yeah, so that market was crazy. Luckily, that was an interesting listing because it was a challenge. So but it helped me develop professionally as far as marketing on the listing side. Now, when we flipped the script in 2020, Jared, I think you can agree with me here. 2020 was a challenging market for a finance buyer.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
were up against big corporations buying out a lot of properties cash. And continuing my 2020 luck, my first buyer to this day was a VA buyer. We're 0% down. And we were going up against offers offering a K above listing price, throwing appraisal contingencies out the window. Now we're looking at a more balanced market, but it's still challenging. It's a little more challenging on the listing side for us listing agents because now we have inventory. You have the opportunity to shop around and take a look at what you're looking for.
There's a lot going on that's changed. I mean, you're talking about the last 6 years of the real estate market. I mean, it's a night and day difference. How do you find yourself adapting so quickly to kind of the rising and setting of the tide there, if you will?
I think we got to roll with the punches. I think mid 2022, early 2023, interest rates just skyrocketed to about 8%. So that was you had to be strategic. You went from buyers paying their own closing costs, others selling for top dollar to a readjustment. It was a balance where now you're negotiating terms. I remember, submitting an offer, negotiating a fence, that that's how you know when things take a change, right? And when you start negotiating repairs, negotiating costs. I think the key point here is affordability. And I think all of us as a consumer, we're all looking for a good deal. So it's really important for an agent to be not just savvy in the market, but you need to know how to negotiate because at the end of the day, those are terms that it's going to help somebody get a really good deal. And if they get a good deal, what happens, Jared? They refer us more business. I know a guy or I know a girl that can help you get your goal, right?
Exactly. No, that's well said. So you went through the entire spectrum. I like to tell people in the mortgage industry and in real estate, if you worked from 2020 to present, you've pretty much put in 35 years worth of experience condensed into a really small window of time, just because of how much things have changed, how quickly it's changed, interest rate landscape, requirements for borrowers, like what you talked about. You're going up against corporations that are bidding for homes and absolute madness. So if you were to take all that and kind of like put it together, right? What have you learned that's kind of allow you to handle some of the emotional gut punches that have happened throughout your career and being able to kind of stay positive? You seem like a really upbeat person. So, that's a real good feature to have in this business, but a lot of people tend to be jaded. So what's your secret to just kind of staying really in the good vibration zone and just being happy all the time, it seems like?
Well, we got to be positive. You got to look at what you can control and what you cannot control. Like I tell my clients all the time when we go show houses, I tell them I love showing houses. I have the time to show houses. I can't control the purchase prices and I cannot control the interest rates. Those are items that are out of my hand. And so being transparent with the consumer, with the buyers, letting them know what the adjustments in the market is, because at the end of the day, real estate, I mean, or even, mortgage professionals, everybody that knows somebody does either real estate or lending, right? But not everybody's great at it. Not everybody's good at it. Not everybody can negotiate it. There's challenges that come to it. So basically I think I approach every situation with a lot of honesty and transparency, right? I remember in real estate school, something that was really adamant to me was life experience, right? Sometimes, it comes down where I have first time buyers who've never owned a home, who've never even rented. This is a big wake-up call, right? It's a big commitment when you purchase a home. Or I have clients that lost their home in 2008, 2009. So they still have that skepticism of where, can that happen to me again? So that's where, we want to be diligent in explaining to the consumer exactly how the process is. The best thing that we can do is we try to look at the market every day, but, we have to also be prominent in its fluctuations as well.
Absolutely. And from our last conversation too, some things that you mentioned, I mean, you can't fix everyone's problem and you're really adamant about that. And I think that's a really healthy way of looking at this space, as a profession, because you can do your best for somebody and you can be there for them. I mean, you talked about how you've been a marriage counselor, a therapist, even helped somebody with a haunted house, which is just a crazy story, but ultimately at the end of the day, like this is their transaction. You can do your part and you can advise them and lead them where they say they want to go, but it's up to them to follow through, right? So yeah, no, I want to backtrack though. So tell me about the haunted house because that's I love that stuff. So yeah, tell me about it.
Well, I had a client that was very specific on the home. I see multiple homes multiple times a year. So there was this particular house, and as an agent, we're going into people's homes. So this house was kind of weird. It had a weird aura to it. I think was already a red flag when the house had a basement. So there's
Oh, wow.
not a lot of yeah,
Yeah,
there's not a lot of
not much
Arizona
like
homes.
that here in Arizona.
Yeah, there's not a lot of Arizona homes that have basements, and I remember, the first floor was great, remodeled. The basement was remodeled. Everything was great. The client really liked the house, and they wanted to put an offer in. And I remember, that night I had like a really bad dream about that house,
Man.
like a bad dream. And so like I called my client and specifically it was in the basement. So I called my client, I'm like, "Hey, we saw this house, but it's giving me like the heebie-jeebies." And so the client was like, "Well, I don't know, we might not just offer on that house. I'm feeling a little bit weird about it too."
Okay, so it was
So
like that
it
mutual understanding. Yeah.
it was a mutual understanding. So that was one instance. I had another client that was actually really particular. She told me about like putting salt in front of the front
Mm.
door or cinnamon, and I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, are we gonna like give these spirits dinner? Like we're gonna cooking a meal? What are we doing here? So, those are two kind of particular instances. We do run across some of these houses, they're historic homes, they've been around for a really long time. They have a history. Was I around in 1930, 1950? No, no, I was not. Sometimes I have clients that say, "Hey, like, how can I pull up the history of the home?" Or I was like, "Well, on paper, we can pull up a title history, of who owned the home." But I always tell the clients, if you really want to get the juicy information on the property, you're gonna have to talk to the neighbor that's been there for at least 30 years
Knows the
plus.
chisme, knows the gossip. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
No, that's awesome. So besides ghost hunting, what do you focus on with like do you have like a niche that you're focused in these days where like as far as the market goes, are you more into like buyers or sellers or new construction or tiny homes or what exactly are you looking at these days?
And really right now where business is, I am all over the place. I have new construction. I have listings. I've represented buyers. I've sold from Tucson, Arizona, all the way to Sholo, Arizona. Primarily, I am focused in Maricopa County. The
Hmm.
majority of my clients are in the Northwest, Southwest Valley. There's a lot of development like in Goodyear, Avondale, Vistancia. I mean, there's a lot of development going on right now in the West Valley, but primarily I go where business takes me. These out of county transactions have been clients that have been referred to me and they stick to me. They're like, "We want you to represent me." And it is a transition because in Maricopa County, we're here in the city where it's hot. But once we go to, for example, Navajo County, Prescott, things change. The geography changes. The property setup changes. So those are adjustments that, I have to tell. the client's like, "Hey, that's all fine and dandy, but, you might be used to living in the city. Over there, you're not gonna have a public sewer. You're gonna have to live off septic, or you're
Big
not gonna
difference.
have."
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not gonna have the big one is for the wives where they're like, "Well," they're like, "We want a gas stove," and I'm like, "Great, you're gonna have to buy your propane tank to fill it." And so their idea of kinda living outside of the city changes a little bit, but again, it's getting that information and then being well informed of what they're walking into.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. I mean, the people have their romantic ideas about what it's like living on acreage or like outside the city limits. But here in Phoenix, we got some pretty nice luxuries for hanging out in Maricopa County in the actual cities, and that you take for granted. I mean, you leave and you don't realize like what you just talked about: septic, sewer, living off a well, or having a propane tank on the property that you have to pull gas from. I mean, those are no minor things, and that's a huge adjustment. Speaking more and transitioning kind of maybe some newer agents that this is their first or second year getting into it and they're hitting a wall and it's just getting really hard for them. From your experience, what would be some advice for an agent just to maybe give like a new feeling of exhilaration, or maybe an agent that's just needs to kind of get back into the flow of things when you find yourself there? Because we all go through moments of fatigue. What do you typically do to kind of get the energy back going in the right direction?
So what I would recommend to a new agent, I think it's the easiest aspect. I think when you first start, you start chasing the business, you go out into the public, right? But in reality, we don't stop and take back and actually take a moment to think about the people we know, your friends, your family, your neighbors. So typically, that's known as our SOI, the sphere of influence, right? I went through and when I first got my license, I went through every contact on my phone. I took a picture of my business card. I'm like, "Hey, I'm a real estate agent. So if you're looking to buy or purchase, give me a call." And it was like a direct text message to that person. Very simple, it doesn't take you more than 2 seconds to do. You have to set up your day. I do remember when I first started, there was an agent here at my brokerage, and he told me, and it's true, because when you go from like a 40-hour work week, 9 to 5, you're stuck in that mindset, right? When you become self-employed, you're in charge of your own time. So it's very easy to kind of fall off that time management piece and focus on things that have nothing to do with your business goal. Setting up, having coffee with somebody, having that conversation. It's a lot easier to talk to somebody that you know versus when you start talking to a stranger, you get a little more
Sure.
nervous.
Yeah.
But my recommendation is don't give up. You got to keep pushing. If you can at least close 2 or 3 transactions this year, this is a challenging market. It's a challenging market for seasoned agents. So if you can close 1 deal or 2 deals as a new agent, you're doing the right steps. If you're trying to get ahead, just have that conversation with people that you already know. Have coffee, have a lunch meeting, give them your business card. We talk to people every day, every day. That's a missed opportunity to just even introduce yourself.
For sure. No, I think that's well said. All right. It's going to be more of a deeper question here, so bear with me. I ask this just about everyone that I talk to on here. Way out in the future, a lot of times pass. We're looking back at your life. Everyone's at a celebration of life for you. People are passing around the microphone, giving stories and testaments, all that kind of stuff. What do you want the theme to be? What do you want people to say about you when your time's done here?
Wow, that is deep.
I wasn't kidding.
Well, you know what? I'm hoping my celebration is in a long, long time, but
Yes. Yes.
I think I want to be remembered as somebody that of confidence, somebody that can approach me with an issue. I may not have a resolution for everything, but I try to solve as many problems as I can. I try to be that shoulder to cry on. I try to be that person that gives their shirt off their back. And I want to be remembered as that person with having a good heart. I think that is my primary goal here, is if when the day comes that I leave this earth, that they remember me as a person for having a good heart, for having good intentions, and being someone who is, I think my biggest goal would be to be someone who's respected. I think that's my biggest goal. Respected among my peers, respected among my friends, my colleagues, family. That I think that would be my biggest goal here.
Beautiful. I love it. I love it. Mabel, I want to make sure I'm saying your name right because I know sometimes it can get a little confusing. You're telling me, like, if you can call me Cash, you can, or if you pay me cash, you can call me baby, which I thought was the funniest line I've heard somebody say in a long time. But you're not from Alabama or Georgia. How do you
No.
pronounce your name?
So my name is a funny story. So my mom in Spanish, it's Mabel. And then the way it was spelled Mabe, then it's pronounced Mabel, right? So some people, I've had people that are like, I haven't heard that name in like 50 years, but you sound really young. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm only like in my 30s. But
Exactly.
then my mom changed her mind and decided to spell my name Mabelle. So then I started going as Mabel. So that's why I had people call me Maple, Marble,
Marble.
Mabel, Maribel. That's why I said, well, you can call me whatever you want. I'll respond to anything. But if you're going to pay me cash, you can call me baby.
I love it. That's great. I love it.
Really, my name is just, I think it really just came to like my mom's indecisiveness on how to spell it and the pronunciation and the translation of my name. So that's really what it came down to.
Perfect. Perfect. So, listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Mabel, thank you so much for making time to come on. If people want to find you, how can they track you down? How can they get in touch with you?
Call me, cell phone, TikTok. You can find me on Instagram and real estate, or you can call me through my cell phone at 602-799-5002 or Mabel Navarro Realtor on Facebook as well.
And I'll make sure that her information is posted in here. If you like what you've seen today, go ahead and like and subscribe. Mabel, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Jared. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, everyone, thank you for watching. Goodbye and take care.